Actually, yeah, I guess I can see, or at least for a second. Now I can.
This one's me.
How close should I be?
That's entirely up to you.
How's this? Oh,
It's a
jeez.
little too close.
That was entirely on me.
Alright, well, if you're ready to roll, we'll get going.
Cool.
Alright, well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We finally made it.
Yeah, finally made it after months of bugging you to
I would say
be on the pod.
months. I mean, it's
years.
been, yeah, maybe a couple of years.
Maybe. I mean, I'm a long time viewer.
Yeah.
Since we met, I've been tuning in at the Yelling at Concrete podcast.
Yeah, I mean, even then, since then, like, I think that's maybe the more interesting part is how we know each other.
Yeah.
Is through the internet.
Yes. For those who don't know.
As
We probably met on like the worst platform to meet people.
I don't know,
On the
because I feel
internet.
like Twitter kind of wins that.
That's actually in recent years. Yeah, Twitter has definitely taken that, and I think 4chan also. 4chan's also a bad place to.
Yeah, 4chan, if we'd met on 4chan, one of us would be dead.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not. We're here recording a podcast.
Or we just AI generated.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe this whole thing is AI generated.
Maybe. No, but we met through Reddit
Mhm.
because it was during the pandemic when I was streaming for however many days I streamed for. 300 and something.
Something, yeah. You
Yeah.
and you did it in like 2 rounds, I think, right?
Yeah, because I did it during lockdown. So I did it during the first lockdown and then the second lockdown in the UK,
Mhm.
which is obviously a long period. But yeah, that's how we kind of started chatting,
Mhm.
and then just got to know each other through Reddit and various things, and then happened to move to the same location within the world.
Yeah. Happened to move like just a few blocks away from each other, which is crazy.
I mean, that's not too crazy because you are from Jersey.
Yeah, it's more for you though. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's.
Mine's more coincidental than anything else.
Yeah.
Because I happened to find a place which was in the area.
Yeah. I mean, still, I feel like the odds of that. I mean.
It is. I mean, yeah. To say, moving to a location and having someone you know but don't know
Yeah.
is quite slim, I guess.
Yeah, at least someone to kind of chat with, someone to be in the area.
Yeah. Which gives us our first question, which is easy.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Who are you?
Who am I? That's a good question. My name's Emma. I'm the marketing manager of Sony Hall.
You are. Fancy title.
Very fancy. It actually has a "the" in front of it.
It does.
I'm very proud of that. That's something I like to.
It also has the important word, which is manager.
Manager. I manage things.
You're a manager.
Barely,
Yeah.
but I manage things. I'm good. Yeah. But yeah, I work for this venue called Sony Hall. It's in Manhattan, right next to Times Square. It's like a block away.
Literally a block away.
Literally a block away
Yeah.
from Times Square. It's owned by this company called Blue Note Entertainment. And yeah, they have like a joint kind of partnership with Sony Music Group.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's why the names on the venue isn't it's Sony.
But this is not a promotional piece for them.
No, it is not. No.
This is personal.
This is strictly.
All
This
things
is not
said are
spon.
Emma's opinions,
Yeah.
not Blue Nate's opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. Huge disclaimer. Yeah.
I can throw that at the front. I'll do one of those disclaimer warnings, which will just be that.
We're gonna have to do a lot of disclaimers on this podcast. I have a feeling.
Well, you know I don't edit. So,
No.
Yeah. Whatever's said is said.
Whatever said is said. I really enjoy my work so far. I've been there for almost 6 months now. I want to say since November.
Yeah, it's Milan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 months. Yeah, I enjoy my work there so far. Yeah, I've wanted to. I've been striving to work in the music industry for about 3 years now, and I've tried out different jobs. Like I've worked for free for a ton.
I feel like that's the music industry, though.
It is, yeah. I mean, so yeah, I got started working as a kind of an internship. I was an A&R scout for this record label. called
You don't have
huge
to
disclaimer.
we can leave names out of it.
Yeah, I won't use any names about it.
We don't do. There's two things we don't do. We don't discuss real world. And we don't commit libel.
You could have debriefed me before I got on camera.
You want, but we just don't commit libel, so yeah, it's fine.
No, okay.
At least I think like one of them's written and one of them's spoken.
Libel is
Slander. Slander's the other
yeah,
one.
slander's spoken, I
Okay,
believe.
So we don't commit slander.
Yeah.
So we can write it down.
Yeah, I'll write on a huge board.
Well, you were an A&R scout.
I was an A&R scout for this record label. It was more of a, I guess, a platform for artists.
Yeah.
So their main selling point was like artists get 100% creative freedom.
Mm-hmm.
They get 100% of their royalties. They earn everything. And the way that they got signed is by paying the record label essentially to be there. Yeah. Essentially to put their name on their website.
It's kind of the I never actually thought about it. It's kind of like the gallery format, so like if you have like a fine art gallery or something where there's a show going on,
mm-hmm.
like there's one which is coming up soon, which is like Brooklyn Art Fair or something like that.
Okay.
Where essentially the artists keep 100% of their earnings if they sell.
Okay.
But it costs them to apply. So they pay a fee to apply and be there, but then everything they make, because you could outsell whatever you paid as your initial fee.
Sure, yeah.
So I guess that's kind of the same for bands. Of you get the credit of the record label. But
Okay, yeah, I can see that point.
yeah.
I think the trouble is that when it comes to music, like what exactly? I mean, royalties, it doesn't earn you much.
No.
And like especially in the age of like streaming platforms like Spotify, artists are earning like a fraction of a cent per 1,000 views.
Yeah.
So it's like, sure, you're earning 100% of your royalties, but like it doesn't really do much if your record label isn't giving you any kind of guidance or any kind of putting in any effort to platform you as an artist. You know,
if they're not putting in the marketing effort, then there's no point to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so yeah, and even during my my job, during my time there, my whole task was to essentially find these artists online, send their emails to my boss,
Mm-hmm.
and they would talk to the artist, and if the artist was interested and they signed on, then I would get paid commission, essentially.
Right. Okay.
The thing is, I had absolutely no say in that conversation about like, oh, here's why we're interested in you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for my boss's sake, for all she knew, like, it was, she just got these emails and she'd reach out to them and be like, hey, let's talk. But she has no say in whether or not they're good, whether or not they have, she doesn't have any say. She, like, there's no kind of, it's just, I don't know, there's no substance to it. It's just, hey, you're here because someone who works for me gave me your email address.
Yeah, I get that. It's kind of like, I was going to say it's kind of like lawyers, where the main goal of most law firms is to get as many clients on the books as possible.
Yeah.
So, in the hopes that those clients will put them on retainer, so they never have to do anything. They just get like a monthly fee.
Yeah.
And that covers all their legal costs. But they may pay that for like years and years and years, and it could be thousands of dollars every month. Whereas with this, it's kind of like, yeah, just sign up as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Because then you get that intro fee. And then if the band never does anything, doesn't matter, you got their intro fee.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I feel like, and I don't know for sure, huge disclaimer. I
know for sure.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Exactly. But yeah, I personally think that with a business model like that for a record label, essentially the only source of income, especially when you're giving your artists 100% of your royalty, 100% of their royalties, and total creative control, then most of the income for that, for the label is essentially from just booking or signing new artists.
I get the feeling as well, like I mean, obviously I've never read a contract for that kind of thing, but I get the feeling there is some sort of disclaimer in there of if they make it big, they have to renegotiate or something like this, where it's like, because you wouldn't have that business model without a fail-safe in.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of record labels nowadays, they have what's called a 360 contract, and essentially it's this idea where like, okay, we'll give you X amount of money over like a certain period of time, and then after this period of time, then we'll reassess and like we'll go we'll see from there how it goes. And so essentially essentially the whole idea of it is that if an artist is successful, then makes more money for the label, then the label's more willing to give more money to the artist.
Right.
And if they aren't doing so well, then like we'll talk about it.
It's weird. I remember, I'm going to show my age. So, I mean, do you remember YouTube, like, back in the day when it was, like, kicking off with, like, vloggers and stuff?
Kind of.
When it was, like, first getting going. Like, when the Vlog Brothers were, like, first starting out, if you know who the Vlog Brothers are. There was a guy named Alex Day, who's called Nerimon on YouTube, who has now been basically blacklisted from everything because of sexual allegations and all this kind of stuff.
As it is with the
as it was with
YouTubers.
YouTube, and I mean, you could name many people who have been through that. But essentially, he had his music career, which is Alex Day's music career, and he was doing all this musical stuff on YouTube, and he was making it huge.
Yeah,
because that's what the platform was doing. He was very popular, had a popular channel, and I think he got Christmas #1 in the UK. Like he got the top selling single at Christmas in the UK.
Was it like a Christmas theme?
It was like a Christmas themed song. It was very poppy, and that's the aim.
Yeah.
Like the Christmas #1 in the past like 10 years for the UK, it's been a charity single each time.
Oh yeah. Band-Aid.
Yeah. Well, no. There's a guy who does a really annoying song about sausage rolls, and there's a whole shadiness to that whole thing as well, which I won't go into.
Yeah.
But either way, so he got this Christmas #1, did it off his own back, did it through his fan base, YouTube, all this kind of stuff. And then when that happened, record companies reached out to him and were like, hey, we'd love to sign you. Like, we'd love to sit down, have a talk, get you on a contract, sign you. And he went to these meetings and was like, so what can you offer me? And they're like, oh, well, we can offer you, like, exposure and let's see. And he's like, I've had a Christmas #1 without any of that.
Yeah.
What can you actually offer me in terms of a benefit of being signed to your label? And they couldn't give him an answer because the whole point of a record company was just to promote and to basically put their face out there and maybe spend some money on advertising.
Yeah.
In the old school model, at least. And print CDs and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, well, I don't need any of that because I've already achieved everything you're meant to achieve just doing it through YouTube.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's, I think it's good that, I feel like a lot of starting out artists, or artists, I don't want to say younger, I mean it in the sense that, like, their career is younger, is that they're not they don't necessarily want to jump into getting signed to a record label. Some still do, and I'm not saying that, like, it's different for each artist, and every record label is different and has better options for different artists. But I find that there's a lot more artists who are going the full independent route, where they're, they're taking their time with, like, cultivating, their fan base, or working on their music, or working on their own, booking their own shows themselves, instead of having to rely on, say, an agent or a manager or a label. And I think that's ultimately a good thing. I think that it's good for artists to, I don't think, how do I phrase this? I think it's good for artists to figure out who they are as a singer or a musician, or just as an artist in general, before signing on to a label, because you really need to know, like, okay, who is my audience? What kind of music do I want to put out? Because it's really easy for, to have someone come up to...
Keep going.
It's really easy for, for a record label to come up to you and be like, hey, we'll offer you this this kind of money to like, you know, help you out with your career, and you know, if you're successful, then like maybe oh, our food's here. Is this becoming a mukbang?
Hi there. Enjoy it. Carry on.
Where were we? Yeah, it seems very enticing as, you know, somebody who's just getting started, or even someone who's been working in music for a while and hasn't seen, you know, a ton of success, you know, right away. That it's this kind of promise of like, oh, we'll give you money and like we'll give you a platform and we can help you out with your career. And you know, for some artists, it works out really well for them, but for the vast majority of those artists, you know, they're not going to get, you know, they're not going to see the success that, you know, they might have been promised, or just, you know, that they might hope to achieve from signing to a record label.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like it seems weird, like the record label deal and industry has changed but not changed.
Yeah.
In the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I was a kid, that was the thing which bands did, right?
Yeah.
You made it big, you got signed, and that was your kickstart into the industry.
That was your big break,
That was your big break. The whole idea was to get signed so you could go do things and have your CD printed and go, you know, do whatever. And then over time, that changed a little bit, like around the 2000s.
Yeah.
When the internet kicked off and you could suddenly get everything online and record industries didn't know how to monetize.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now it's almost like come full circle, have gone back to...
They figured it out.
They figured it out. They were like, oh, well, we can just lock all this down. You'll make nothing from streaming.
Yeah.
If you do make anything from streaming, you're signed. We make that money anyway, and we'll give you a royalty check, and you'll get what you're given.
Yeah.
And then everything else is still down to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you get that kickstart of advertising.
Yeah.
But your actual money just disappears.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think, and I will say this, I did, while I did just praise the concept of being an independent artist, I still think it's good. I think that there's a huge trade-off to that, and that's essentially you're on your own entirely, and like you have to come up with essentially like your own, like you have to build your career from scratch, and so you have to worry about like marketing yourself and like putting yourself on social media, and you know, and suddenly like, and I think one of the benefits of having, you know, a label or manager or publisher is that kind of burden is taken off you, or at least some part of it is.
Yeah.
But like, I saw this TikTok once where it's a musician, I can't remember his name. I'm really sorry. Shout out.
Shout out to the person we can't remember.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to you. Hope you're watching.
If you're on TikTok and you're a musician, shout out.
Shout out. Shout out to all the TikTok musicians.
Just TikTok musicians in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're
all
putting
struggling. We know.
You're putting in the hard work, and we see you. We love you. We appreciate you.
Not all of you.
Some of you.
Some of you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, it's that essentially what he said is that, you know, the Beatles didn't have to worry about, you know, who, like, their own you know, image as a band. They didn't have to, you know, put out like hundreds of TikToks a day, or doing, you know, their own like promotional work. That was all done by you know, by their label. Or also, I think with the Beatles specifically, you know, they're kind of a rare case where like they just blew up immediately, like...
Yeah, well, they were like the original blueprint, weren't they? Because it was like,
yeah,
they started, and they, like, I mean, I don't know too much about Beatles history, but it's very much one of those things where they got signed, and the record label didn't particularly know what to do with them, because there'd never been anything like them.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of like, okay, well, this is what we do, we're brand new, and we can keep doing whatever we want to do because no one's going to compare us to anything else.
Yeah.
And so they just kept going and changing and all that kind of stuff. Whereas now everyone looks in other bands and they're like, oh, well, they're just ripping off the Beatles. It's like, well, yes, but also no.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's ripping off the Beatles.
Like everyone's ripped off the Beatles. The Beatles ripped off other bands. It's it's always that chicken and egg situation of which band came first.
Yeah. I mean,
who influenced who.
I feel like that's the trouble, and I will say this. I'm not an expert on copyright, and I don't want this conversation to go in that direction. But I will say this.
No, God, no.
Be painfully boring. But I think the thing about with like copyright in the music in music, or I feel like it's very tricky because on one hand, I think I don't know I feel like every musician, every song is based on, or it has been inspired at least from other works, other artists, and on I think there's a spectrum. I think that there's there's a difference between paying homage to an artist and then just outright stealing their work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trouble. I don't know. The difficult thing is that it's a very kind of sticky situation because I don't know. You remember Robin Thicke?
Yes.
He do you remember the?
Didn't he get cancelled? I feel like he got cancelled at some point.
Yeah, it's. Oh, I don't know if I would
Is
call
he
it.
still going?
I think so.
Okay.
Shout out.
I don't know. Shout out Robin Thicke.
Shout out
But
Robin
also
Thicke.
maybe not shout out Robin Thicke in case he got
Yeah.
because I don't know enough about Robin Thicke.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
It was that whole period where like Pharrell was
Yes.
like hitting it big.
So so his big song Blurred Lines.
That's why he got cancelled.
Yeah, it
Yes,
was kind
there's
of
lyrics in that which are
the
bad.
lyrics in
Yes.
that were like kind of
Yeah.
It was pushy.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Okay.
And he got sued for it by Marvin Gaye's estate.
Okay.
And the reason being was that they were stealing essentially like the style of Marvin Gaye.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's the exact term that they used, but
Right.
like it wasn't that he like copied any specific lyrics or any kind of specific riff in one of his songs.
Yeah.
It was kind of just that it had a similar sound to Marvin Gaye. And
Okay.
you could point, there's a song, I think Got to Give It Up is what it's called.
Right.
Where it does sound similar. I will say that. But it's a completely different key from Blurred Lines. And like it just has a similar, bass and drum. Drums. So it's but yeah, so and Robin Thicke lost that lawsuit, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, and it and going back to copyright, but essentially like it's kind of a bad precedent for copyright because essentially like how exactly do you copy an artist's sound? Is it like I feel like when it comes to sound or style, it's more of I find that's more along the lines of inspiration, in my personal opinion. I think that it's, I feel like that's kind of where I don't know.
I get what you're saying. It's always one of those tightrope walks, and you see. I mean, this is not just music industry. This is everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you say, like everything is inspired by something else.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to make something entirely original.
Yeah.
Because even if you do make something in a vacuum where you don't experience anything else and you just make something, chances are somebody else has made something which is very similar because there's only a finite combinations of like, things you can do in the world.
Especially in pop music. I mean, like most pop music is only like this. It's the same 4 chords.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of getting to like it's interesting with the Marvin Gaye thing because there was a situation with. I'm hoping I remember the name right. So there's Marzago, who was a pop musician,
Yeah.
and there was an artist called Poppy, and they
Right.
were both produced by the same guy.
Yes.
Because the guy stole one. I can't remember which way around. I think he stole Marzago's sound.
Marzargo was first, and then Poppy was later.
So he essentially took the formula, which was Marzago's music and image, and applied it to another person, and went, "Oh, well, I can just do this. Like, this is fine," and nothing came of it. Like there was no. I don't think there was any like resulting win in a lawsuit or anything. It just ruined ruined Marzago's career or anything like that. Who took a step back from everything because was like, "This is terrible. Someone can do this," and that's the whole. To get into an even wider conversation, that's the whole AI conversation.
Yeah.
Which is AI covers the world and everything it sees, and it interprets that to make something quote unquote original.
Yeah.
But it's not, because that's intentionally scraping.
Yeah.
Whereas as a human being, you walk through the world, you experience everything, and then you come out the other end, and you're like, I had an idea.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that yeah, and you can see that especially with AI art, where they have it has a, I don't want to say distinct style, but it's.
I mean, it does.
It's distinct in the fact that it's very specific in, you know. No, it's. I feel like you can kind of like tell that like it's from very similar artists or like a similar art style, you know?
Yeah, and that's usually because you have to request it.
Yeah.
Right. So you could look at something like someone with a very stylized style, like someone like Aubrey Beardsley, who makes gothic illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
If you typed in, I want to make this image in this style, that would bring it back, and that's an obvious copyright issue. Mm-hmm. Because that's like imitating Marvin Gaye. I want to imitate Marvin Gaye, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to sound like Marvin Gaye. So I'm going to do this, but I'm going to change this. And you're basically piecing together pieces, but with technology is different because it's implied that the technology knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
Whereas like with us, I think there's been more than one case where it's someone releases a song, someone sues them for that song, and the result of the lawsuit is we've added the inspiration of to the liner notes.
Yeah.
So they get credit. Because we don't think it was intentional. We think that they may have heard it at some point, but they didn't set out with the intention to rip off this drum beat, to rip off this bass line. They just happened to use it.
And I don't, I'll be honest, I don't like, I don't know. I'm on the fence actually, because like, you know Olivia Rodrigo? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you guys probably have heard of her.
I'm down with the kids.
Yeah. She, so when she released her first album, Sour, mm-hmm. There are two songs, notably that she had credited, or she gave writing credits to other artists who weren't involved in the writing process. Yeah. So one of the songs was Good For You, mm-hmm. and she credited that to Hayley Williams, lead singer Paramore. Right. And she also gave credit to Taylor Swift for her song Deja Vu. Okay. And so yeah, as I said, neither Hayley Williams nor Taylor Swift worked on mm-hmm. that album, but she still gave them credit. And the reason being was that the logic in that was that these songs were inspired by these other songs that these artists wrote. Yeah. I think like for Good For You, it was Misery Business. Right. And I'm not sure about Taylor Swift, but most, Deja Vu is a breakup song, and Taylor Swift has written like millions of breakup songs.
Really? No.
Not millions.
No. But no, yeah, I get, like, that's interesting, because it's kind of, so there's a difference here between visual art and music, right? Mm-hmm. In that someone makes an album, if they still make albums these days.
They do.
Someone makes an album, and there's credits for an album, mm-hmm. right? A song has credits. It has writer's credits, it has production credits, has all those kinds of things, as do films. Yeah. When someone does a painting, you get a title. Yeah. Whereas if that painting had to list everyone it had been inspired by, would they get credit for it? Is like a huge deviation between art forms. Like there's a corporate side to music. Yeah. Even if you're just making a song, which doesn't exist in any other form. Yeah. Which is crazy in a way.
It is, yeah.
But to go back to what you're saying, like about independent artists and not being signed and being signed, there is that challenge where you're trying to get your music listened to, mm-hmm. or trying to get your art seen. In doing that when you're not sounding like anybody else, mm-hmm. is extremely difficult. Yeah. And at that point, it does become a point where you're like, do I need a record label? Do I need someone who can promote this as the new thing?
Do I need a label who understands my sound and can, knows what kind of audience I can,
who I can target.
Exactly. Yeah.
And at the same time, I think as well, like you were saying, knowing what you want to make before you meet a record producer, mm-hmm. is extremely important.
It is, yeah. And I think, I will say this, I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything controversial, but,
Sure.
like pursuing a career in music has an extremely high barrier of entry and, like, is really, attainable for, really like, attainable for people who can afford to sustain that, including myself. I mean, I said earlier, I worked for free for an entire year. I wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't during the pandemic and I was living with my parents and, like, I could afford to, not get paid. So yeah, it's definitely not a meritocracy in the music industry.
No.
But but yeah, so for people to, for artists to pursue, the independent career path, that is, it's hours upon hours of grueling work and, like, not a lot of pay because essentially unless you have a side gig or, like a part-time job that you can help support yourself, it's very difficult to, sustain a career off of that. And, it makes sense when, to have a record label, have an A&R executive. I don't think it's kind of dying out now, but the whole A&R, artist and repertoire, that's essentially the people who stand in the back of venues with aviators and say, "Hey kid, I think you got this stuff."
I could do that.
You know what? I kind of wanted to do that. I mean, that's why I worked as a scout. That was one of the.
Like a hat and like a trench coat and
I
just
would-
stand in the back and with
yeah.
sunglasses on. Just get a reserved table.
Yeah.
Send a drink to the band afterwards and be like,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Have people in the venue go, who's that?
Okay, so here's a dumb question for you. Why don't more people start record labels?
It's I don't know. It's a lot. I feel like it's a lot of moving parts. It's for one, it's expensive as hell.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I guess this is my other question is, like, what is involved in a record label? In the modern, like I know back in the day, a record label was advertising, print, marketing, the actual production of vinyl and CDs and tape and everything like that.
Yeah, there's definitely tons of elements to that.
Whereas now,
it's hard to kind of the thing about the music industry is that there's a ton of it isn't just record labels that are in the industry. There's also publishers that handle the music itself, song rights. You can also there are also management companies where, like, they can essentially, like, run your career. There are booking agents who can go figure, can help you book gigs. For a record label, I mean, it depends. It can offer all of those things. It can offer just booking and marketing. Sometimes it can offer it can also offer, like, merchandising if that's something that it does. So it's I don't know. There's kind of it's very nebulous, I would say.
right? I guess that's kind of my view of it, is because I know at least, I would say 2-3 independent record labels, and they all seem run very different from one another. Like, some of them, it's more you're basically part of their record label, so they'll put your music on their channel.
Yeah.
And their channel already has a following, so therefore you're getting exposure through that XYZ. If they do a big tour, you're probably going to be on that bill.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Whereas other ones, it's like, okay, like you say, it's merchandising, it's help producing a record, it's finding a studio, and that's, again, it's like a whole process of stuff which you may not have thought about as an artist.
Sure, yeah. And one thing that I noticed is that a ton of artists who are well established, who've perhaps already had a contract at, like, say, a major label, had their big break, and then their contract is up. A lot of these artists, what they'll do is that they'll start their own record label, and essentially take control of their career that way. Yeah. And I think that's also a great thing to have. That it's and you can also use that as an opportunity to platform other artists as well. Like, so for example, Jack White. I think I want to say it's 30 Tigers.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody in the
Something
comments will
Tiger
correct.
involved.
Yeah, 30 Tigers. He started his own record label. I'm trying to think of who else. Like, the only reason why I know this is when I worked in vinyl manufacturing. Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think. I remember, like, I think the guys from I want to say Bare Naked Ladies.
Okay.
He has his own record label.
Oh,
Um,
that's interesting.
but yeah, essentially, so they start their own kind of small micro record labels, and in a way, they can have that tailored to what they want out of their industry. So for them, like they wanted to a lot of these. So my previous job is I worked in vinyl record manufacturing. I wasn't not specifically manufacturing. It was the kind of broker middleman type of work.
Yeah.
It's in between the labels and the vinyl manufacturers, as well as like CDs and cassettes. We're kind of like the in between.
Yeah.
And so so some of these smaller labels started by artists themselves. They would come to us and they would have more control over. They would have say in like how they want to manufacture their vinyls, and they work with distributors and all that, and essentially they would have a hand in that process as opposed to you say like Universal or Sony or Warner Music Group having that kind of decision.
Yeah, I think that comes back to what you're saying of like, it's worth knowing what you want to make before getting signed, because by getting signed you sacrifice some level of your creative freedom, whether it's not
more than some, I would say.
Yeah, especially if it's like a major label.
Yeah.
Like big, like say like Sony or like
Warner Music
Why can
Group.
I only think of Sony?
It's the big three. That's Sony, Universal, and Warner.
Okay, and I'm assuming Apple has their own label. I'm just at this point they have to.
They might. I know TikTok at one point they were considering becoming a label, or maybe not necessarily a label, but like they wanted to veer into the music industry.
I could see that, because then they'd own their own catalog and they wouldn't have to deal with copyright claims.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they'll do that after they get banned. We'll see.
Yeah. We'll see.
After you can no longer.
I'm rooting
access
for
it in
them.
the US. But yeah, like we're saying, it's like if you get signed with a big label, you basically stuck with whatever you were making.
Yeah.
At that time, like if you were making one specific kind of song, and you may even be asked to change that in order to continue to be signed or continue to produce records, or they'll put you on a shelf, and they'll stop, because there's I think I can't remember if I've spoken about this one before, but do you know who Lordi are?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Lordi are a metal band from, I want to say, Sweden, Finland, somewhere North Europe.
Yeah.
They won. You know what Eurovision is, right?
Yes, I know what Eurovision is.
Well, it's happening right now.
Yeah.
For the timestamp of this, it's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's like the semi-finals. Essentially, they were a major metal band. Everyone knew who they were within the metal grouping.
Yeah.
If you know who. And they were unsigned. They were unsigned, so they technically can enter Eurovision, because that's the rule of Eurovision. You can't be a signed act. You have to be an independent act to be in part of Eurovision. So they entered Eurovision, and they won, because they're an actual band.
Yeah.
They've already got years of touring experience, all this kind of stuff. They won, and they got signed by, I think it was someone like Warner Brothers, or someone like that. And they basically didn't know what to do with them, because they're a very niche band. They dress up in like devil costume, they do full makeup effects, all this kind of stuff. Their whole shtick is they're like mythical demon creatures, and they're part of this band. And so when they got signed and they were like, oh, we need you to make your next album, their next album failed because they didn't know how to market it.
Okay,
They
yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
how to do anything with it. And they're like, oh, well, we need to get you more traction. So they put him on, like the lead singer, on essentially the Swedish version of X Factor as a judge.
Okay.
And they're like, you're going to be a judge on this, and it's going to be great because you're going to be in your costume, you're going to be on TV every week, which gets your music out there.
Yeah.
And it didn't help him at all, because obviously everyone in the
yeah, because like
genre,
the people who watch Swedish X Factor are not going to watch some crazy demon band.
and everyone who was in the alternative genre looked in when you sold out. Like,
exactly.
You went
yeah.
and did this. Why are you doing this? And they went through this whole process, this whole rigmarole of the person who was handling them and their account didn't know what to do with them, and essentially got fired in the end. along with like other stuff they were doing.
Yeah.
And they got reassigned to someone else, and the guy who took them over was like, okay, what do you actually want to make?
Mm-hmm.
Let's restart this process, because they'd been in this corporate process and it messed them up.
Yeah.
It completely messed them up. Even the country, like they'd won Eurovision, they got all this patriotic pride,
Mm-hmm.
the country loved them, and then they rejected them because they were like, no, it's gone bad. Like,
And like when it comes to that, after all that happens, like I mean, you said like to essentially redo it. It's like you can't redo a career.
Yeah.
How do you bounce back from that?
it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like you know who Fight Star are?
No.
Do you know who Busted are?
No. Are these all Eurovision acts?
No.
I haven't watched Eurovision.
No. So Busted were they were Pop's answer to Blink-182.
Okay.
Right? So they were a 3-piece of guitarists. They didn't have a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And they were a boy band. And they were a manufactured Blink-182.
I feel like that's a bit redundant.
It's a little bit redundant.
Yeah.
But they were manufactured. But they did there's a song they did called Been to the Year 3000.
Oh, yeah.
So that's Busted. So they were huge. They
Mm-hmm.
were a manufactured band. They were sold to kids, and kids loved them, and teenage girls loved them because they were these 3 boys, and because
These
that's what
3
they like.
boys.
They like teenage girls like boys.
Yep.
That's the thing.
They
They like
love
girls
them
too. But
they love them and their floppy haircuts and their puka shell necklaces.
they were all about it. So they got huge, and their lead singer Charlie left their band
Okay.
because he was a musician.
Yeah.
He's like, I started doing this to make money. I was told I could make a lot of money doing it. I have made a lot of money doing it. I'm, hugely famous. But my musical interests are alternative metal.
Yeah.
And I'm in a boy band. And everyone hates me because I'm in a boy band. So he went and formed his own group called Fight Star, which was an emo metal band.
Okay.
Who were very good. And everyone was like, this is crazy. This guy can really play and sing. And why has he been doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And then they reformed Busted a few years ago.
So, like, is it just, like, none of the original members are...
No, the original lineup. And they were like, we're going to do a tour. We're going to do a Busted reunion tour. And like, kind of like what you're saying, like, how do you restart that? Like, you've gone from one industry where you were a complete sellout to a legitimate artist to back to a...
I mean, like, if you have... I don't know how successful it was.
That was huge.
It was huge?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was
Well,
huge.
that's the thing. When you have, like, a huge pop hit, I mean, that's a huge, that has a huge draw for people. You can make fun of, like, the general public and, the band for selling out, but, it's popular for a reason, and, there's people wanted that. And I think that like, there's nothing wrong with having, different audiences for different different projects that you work on.
Yeah.
I think it's, if you want to make like a metal emo, release a metal emo album, and have a band through that, and cultivate an audience through that avenue, but also have this huge pop hit that's now like a nostalgic selling point. It's I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with that.
No, I think it's just interesting. I think it's like with the saying, like when you're trying to create stuff, I think it's something which is very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to hop between things. So when you get started, having that right footing is important. Like, it's impressive that he was able to do that.
Yeah.
He was able to go from that genre to legitimizing himself, to then go back to that genre and not lose anything in the process.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I feel like that's the case for a lot of one-hit wonders.
Yeah.
I think that they have, I don't know, because I've never been a one-hit wonder.
There's still time.
There's still time. Knock on wood. I feel like it'd be
People
cool.
do it every day.
Yeah, exactly. It happens all the
there
time.
was that song about fish on TikTok, which was like about little fish, if you were a fish and I were a fish or something, and it was by those 2 girls, and they had that song, and it was on literally every reel, Instagram, TikTok.
Oh, God.
And it was on everything, and it was like...
Baby Shark has evolved.
They just seemed like 2 genuinely nice people who happened to be in like a little folk duo, and they made this song, and it was everywhere. I haven't heard anything since then by them from that point on.
It's, I feel like, I think a lot of a lot of artists, when they a lot of one-hit wonders specifically, they like achieve this like huge level of fame for like this one song that like, you know, gives them all this like, you know, success, and, you know, they get a lot of money from it, a lot of attention, a lot of exposure. And I think for a lot of those artists, they see that and they're like, okay, that's cool. I think I'm gonna, you know, either, you know, not focus on anything else, or, you know, focus on something else, or focus on the music that I really want to make. Yeah. Or just, you know, I have achieved all this like fame and success, and I don't really like it, or I don't. This isn't the life for me.
Yeah.
They're different, you know, different
different
cases.
Goals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are also plenty of one-hit wonders out there who want to develop a career that's sustainable, but they just, unfortunately, they don't achieve that.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking then, like, there's a couple of, like, it's interesting. So, 2 points. One, it was just reminding me of someone who did Someone I Used to Know.
Yes, Gautier.
Yeah. Did that song, disappeared.
Yeah.
It was like, this isn't for me. I don't like this level of attention.
Yeah.
But I want to go do other things, so it's continue to go do other things. And I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
But like you say, they get this massive attention from one song, they go viral.
Yeah.
And they realize that it's too much. And so they just back away from it.
Yeah.
Or they have to back away from it because there's too much pressure to do the next one. Like,
absolutely. And it's like, you know, I'm sure that when in between like your first hit single and your next release, or even like your first album and your sophomore album, there's this kind of pressure of like, oh, you don't want to be the, you know, the Somebody I Used to Know guy. You don't want to be, you know, known for that one song. And like there's a lot of pressure because like you think like, okay, and I think that when it comes to fame and money, I think in the entertainment industry in general, it's success is never something that is, you know, if you achieve it, it's not something that you can maintain or that you can get too comfortable with. Yeah. You have to constantly, you know, keep it up, make sure that you still stay relevant, that you still stay, you know, that people still want to, you know, listen to your music or watch your movies or, you know, get invested in your career. Yeah. It's never something that like you get it and then you're good you're sold for the rest of your career.
Yeah. I think that's like the second bit which I'm kind of getting to is, so when we're like the whole one-hit wonder thing during the 80s was like a curse. Yeah. It's always been a curse. It's been, you have one massive hit. Yeah. It takes you to sky high, like Chesney Hawkes, if you know who Chesney Hawkes is, or you maybe know. No. He did a song called I Am the One and Only. It's I Am the One and Only.
His song was The One and Only.
And he was the only hit. The only hit he ever did. And there was like Tiffany, and who did like big songs. It was the Mall song, and they hit these big hits, and then they disappeared into the ether.
They go back to Germany, where they're from.
Yeah, they just go off and they do other things, or they try to follow up and they fail. Yeah. But it's interesting because everyone tried to avoid that. Yeah. Like every artist has been like, I don't want to be a one-hit wonder. Yeah. So they have an album of songs which are like, this whole thing needs to be listened to together. Get rid of the single, ignore the single. Whereas now we've gone to a business model where the aim is to go viral. Yeah,
so I remember I had this interview with
names deleted.
Actually, well, we've already mentioned it. Okay. It's with this major label. Right. One of the big three. They it was for an A&R position. And they asked me, and this was one of the questions that I was primed to answer, or something that like I prepared to answer. And the question was, how do you recognize like a hit song? Mm-hmm. And the correct answer you give them is it has to be like a hook. Yeah. It has to be something. It doesn't even have to be a lyric or a chorus, or like it just has to be something that gets in your brain. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes from, you know, I think that comes from TikTok in my opinion, because what is TikTok but, you know, using, you know, certain sound bites from songs that you know, are completely out of context from the rest of the song are just used, ad nauseum for for virality's sake, and essentially like, you memeify a song, and I feel like that's. I think that like it could work for certain like pop songs or whatever, but I don't think that's I personally don't think that's how you should approach I don't. It shouldn't be how you approach music,
Yeah.
I think that like, I feel like I've developed this kind of, I don't know, this radar for songs that I'm like, I hear it and I'm like, you wrote that to make it go viral on TikTok.
Yeah, and I think that's true. You do get artists now, which do approach it that way.
Yeah.
You're trying to get the one-liner.
Like
the one hook which says, it's either saying you can repeat this and people won't get bored of it.
Yeah.
Or this is relatable. Like just like one line. All it has to be is one line.
Yeah.
It just has to be about life. It can be generalized. It can be whatever, because you can put it over whatever content you're making.
Yeah.
And you can reuse it. And it's like an advertising song. Like,
yeah.
You want the one line they'll use in the advert about Huggies diapers, because they're going to pay you so much money to use this one line.
Yeah.
And TikTok is exactly that, whereas you have artists who are literally aiming for that one line. But if you asked them to do a live show, they would fail.
Yeah. I remember, so when I worked for this live event, it's is another A&R job. It was a scouting job where I would look for artists online to showcase at this live show. And essentially, like, when I had to submit these artists who I found, I would always have to submit a live recording.
Right.
Especially within the past few years with the pandemic, you have a lot of like bedroom. I don't want to say bedroom artists, but like bedroom pop, and not to knock bedroom pop or people who get started from with their career, with their musical career in their bedroom, but it's it doesn't necessarily demonstrate. It kind of just demonstrates that you can record a song well.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you can perform live or that you can engage with an audience, or you can even play your instruments. And so when I was scouting for artists, I wouldn't just look at their Spotify and listen to their music. I would look them up to see if there's any recordings of them performing live.
Yeah, and I think it's like you say, it's a different set of skills.
Yeah.
It's a different bag of talent to be able to, there is some musicians I listen to who don't tour.
Yeah.
Because they know they can't do it.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm not comfortable on stage. I don't want to be on stage, but I want to make music.
Yeah.
So here's the music.
And if that's what you want to do, then that's fine. I don't you shouldn't, I don't think that you should be forced to play live if that's not what you want to do as an artist.
I think, to kind of round this out to a simple point is there, I don't think, you may disagree. I don't think there's any one way of doing this.
No.
There's no one way of doing the music industry.
No.
And even though it's changed, it's still as messy as it was.
At the end of the day, you're getting paid jack shit.
Yeah. At the end of the day.
So you might as well
getting ripped off.
Might as well, do your career, or have a career the way you want to,
Yeah. And that brings me to one of my last two questions.
Oh, God.
Which is nice and simple.
I know. I feel like I know what you're going to ask.
Wait.
Just ask them.
Okay. So you're doing things the way you want to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of what you do and what your opinions are on music and the industry and everything like that, when you think of yourself as a kid, is this what you saw yourself thinking and doing?
Yes and no. I think I definitely saw myself working in entertainment. I had this kind of this pipe dream of becoming a pop star.
We've all been there.
Yeah, showing up all my middle school bullies.
Performing the assembly.
Exactly.
All going, oh my God, I was so wrong.
We were wrong about her.
We're so wrong. How do we not get it?
Yeah. But I think I always wanted to work in work in a creative field. I never saw myself working a kind of office job. Not to say that those are bad. But it's just, I don't know. It's something that I wanted to. I want to pursue a career or something. I don't know, pursue work that I'm interested in, something that I get fulfillment from, and I get a lot of fulfillment from music, from entertaining people. Yeah, all that
Makes
stuff.
sense. Do you think being in the industry has changed your opinion on music?
Yeah, definitely. I would say so. I think that I think for me, I've both gotten. I think I've been both humbled, but also a little bit at the same time a little bit more. I don't want to say snooty about it, but I think that like I feel a bit more confident in my. I don't know. Sometimes I feel a bit more confident in my tastes or like in recognizing if an artist has potential or not. But at the same time, can also be completely wrong. And like there've been several times where like I've submitted an artist to my boss and they came back with a hell no. And that's fine. I think that like this whole industry is it's full of people who have very strong opinions.
Yes.
And there are plenty of people who think I have great taste in music, and plenty of people out there who think I have shit taste in music. And that's
That's
how
the way
it is.
it is.
Yeah.
And I like you say, I think especially in your industry, it is people with strong opinions.
Yes.
But you're only ever gonna do what you think is right anyway.
Yeah.
Like whether it's for the audience you're catering to, or just what you think will be good.
Yeah.
And there's no avoiding that, which is the right approach to take, I think.
Yeah.
Just don't sell out too hard.
No, don't.
It's always the goal.
Before you sell out, at least know what you're doing.
Before you sell out, listen to "Sell Out" by Real Big Fish, and
Watch
that explains the whole thing.
Listen to "Sell Out" by Big Fish.
Real Big Fish.
Real Big Fish.
Yeah.
Also watch this episode of the podcast.
Yes, and you will figure it out. So my final question, which I assume you already know, is who should I speak to next?
Who should? Oh, I don't know. There's plenty of artists out there who I think are very talented. Would be great on your podcast. I mean, just to give them some free advertising. My friend Phoebe Kadish, she's very talented. She's currently on tour right now, doing a Carole King tribute act. Yeah, she'll be in New York City, City Winery, on May 19th, I believe.
This will go out after that.
Yeah. Okay.
But check her.
Never mind. It's
I've
past.
seen her perform live. She's very good.
She is very good. Also, Torture in the Desert Spiders. Yeah, Anna Kuntz. They're very great. I feel like they're also. I feel like they would be more up your alley in terms of like the style of this show. I think. I feel like.
What is the style of this show?
Two people sitting in your apartment next to your living room shower.
That is true. If you can see on camera, I don't know if you can see, I forgot how I framed the shot, but my shower's in my living room.
This is his shower right here.
It's just in my life.
It's iconic. I love it.
Yeah, it's just how I live my life.
Yeah.
But either way, I think those are good suggestions. Been very good chat to you.
It was great chatting you too.
Hopefully it was lived up to the expectation of what podcasts would be.
I would say so. Yeah.
As a long time listener, first time guest.
First time guest.
Yeah.
Not last time. I'd love to be on again.
Maybe
in a few years.
Yeah, we could do a check-in. We could do like a check-in, see how things are going.
Yeah, see how I'm doing. See how see how the music industry has fared on me.
It's like 4 or 5 years from now, you're like an accountant.
I'm gonna have like gray hair.
Yeah.
Accountant.
You'd just have a long drag of a cigarette between every sentence, and you'll turn to me and just be like, "So it's like this."
Yeah.
And
Let me tell you about accounting.
Let me tell you about the industry. I don't know why everyone's like an 80s haggled agent.
I feel like the music industry does. I don't know. I feel like for some people it can make them incredibly cynical, and I'm still young enough in my career where I don't think I have that yet. I hope to maintain that, but
dream.
A girl can dream. Yeah.
Can dream. And that's a good point to end this on.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. And
Thank
we
you.
will talk to these guys later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.